Give me a thumbs up if you're done. Cool. Let's talk about it. What'd you guys notice or think about it? Like specifically in terms of like the way that Jesus handles suffering.
Kind of silently.
Yeah.
Like, there's
Yeah.
no mention of him saying anything for like 3 o'clock.
Yeah. She said he handles it mostly silently.
Like he doesn't seem to like. There's like no reaction. Like as they're like beating him, mocking him, like there's just no reaction. And when they offer him something to like ease the pain, he doesn't take it. Like it's just.
Yeah.
The thing that also sticks out to me is it seems like it's needlessly mean. It's just really, that's like, to put it very lightly, like they go above and beyond like mocking him, and they're not just crucifying him, they're like shaming him as much as they know how, you know, maybe even to try to like get a rise out of him.
Mm-hmm.
I agree. Reading the passage, it made me really sad how he was treated so poorly. But when I came to the verses about them mocking him while he was on the cross, just the types of phrases they were saying to him, the phrases that I hear people
Dog party. Keep going.
it made me the type of phrases I hear today when people mock Jesus. Basically, it made me think that people are still mocking types of things today. People are still hostile to God, which is kind of what I think. Yeah, they're not just rude, hostile.
Yeah. Not just rude, but hostile. Yeah. I feel like maybe we're gonna. You think they're gonna? So we have two. I want you guys to see what's going on over here. We have two lovely dogs that are so excited to see each other. That's how I feel too, you guys. I think just let them play, maybe. Yeah. I don't think there's any way they're gonna give up on. Are they gonna bite each other?
No, it's not
Oh yeah. I mean, I can totally. If you guys want to let them go, I can totally shut the gates.
Oh yeah.
It's your call. Done. If you go to Open Home Online service, it's got the passage and all the stuff you need for your
good.
paper wise. So my printer's broken. Keep going. What'd you guys notice about Jesus' handling of suffering?
It seems like they're like, I mean, they're like asking him like to prove himself, but he chooses not to like prove himself in any way. Like chooses not to like, I don't know, show that he can get off the cross or like those kinds of things.
Yeah. Yeah, it doesn't prove himself.
What he does say at the end is always kind of confusing for me.
Why have you forsaken me?
Yeah, it's like, oh,
he's in it.
That's like his last word, you know?
Yeah.
That's the very last thing that Jesus says.
Yeah.
And it's a pretty despairing sentence.
Yeah. What's interesting also is like someone said this at a Bible study a few years ago, and it stuck with me because it was so deep. Like that for Jesus, the greatest pain was disconnection from God, and that's a place that we live all the time. But for him to experience that for a second, it wasn't the physical or something else. It was this state of disconnection from the Father that was the deepest pain, and that's how we always live. Yeah. Let's focus on verse 23. That's the main one that I'm gonna jam on tonight, which is so right before he's crucified, like even his executioners know that what he's about to go through is like way too painful to face. And so they make wine and mix it with myrrh, which was supposed to be this heavy narcotic that would knock him out so that he wouldn't feel what he was about to endure. What do you make of that detail? Come on.
He's like confronting the pain versus like numbing it out.
Yeah.
I mean, I think his willingness to endure intense suffering when he could have taken their narcotic or could have done some miracle.
Oh boy. Hey.
Sorry.
I love it. This is my kind of church.
I feel like it's pretty special to me because it's like Jesus wanted to feel the most intense suffering that humans can feel, you know.
Yeah.
And that if he hadn't have done that, he wouldn't have been as awesome to me personally.
Yeah. Yeah, and Jesus is not like anti-wine, right? He's not a teetotaler. He turns water into wine. He calls his blood wine. He calls the kingdom of God a wineskin. Maybe like a grandma or a pilgrim wants to like read it that way, but Jesus was not like, my last act is don't drink wine. Like, so what I think what this means is that Jesus was somebody who was totally willing to drink wine in celebration, but he would not drink it to numb the pain because he needed to show up for it. So a few weeks ago, we had our first kind of in-person thing that a fair amount of people showed up to. And it was like the first time I'd seen that many friends in one place. It's like, I don't know, it was only like 10 or 15 friends, but it was like, oh, they're like, there's people that I know all in one place. And like my inner extrovert, my like little, you know, I was acting like a puppy, like just like jazzed about the fact that there were a bunch of people that I loved in one place. But it also felt really weird, like so different than when we had met for church the last time before coronavirus hit. So it felt like it scratched an itch, but showed me how itchy I was. And then that night we were sending 2 really awesome people from our church because they are moving. And I found out that 3 more really awesome people are planning on moving. And I was so like bummed. And I was just like, oh my God, like, is Open Home going to be another one of those orgs that just gets crushed by this virus? And I think I've been stressed out about just a ton of stuff. And that kind of put me over the top in terms of feeling like really sad. And so I grabbed, for dramatic effect, I have it right here, this bottle. I grabbed this bottle as soon as everybody left and I drank it straight, like get the alcohol in me as fast as I can because I don't want to feel what I'm feeling right now. Yeah, I knew what I was doing. Like, it wasn't like having a nice glass at the end of the night or something. It was like, I feel shitty right now and I need out, like, right now. And part of it was I knew I had a spiritual retreat coming the next day, and I was like not ready for that. I was like, I need to get this in right now. So
I know Jesus is going to tell me not to do this anymore.
So like, let me back up. So heading into COVID, I was actually in a really good spot. I'd spent about 1 year and 2 months with healthy boundaries around drinking, which I hadn't had like 1 year and 2 months before that. But I was in a place where I was like really spiritually feeling healthy, and drinking was where it needed to be in my life. And then COVID hit, and at first, because I was in a really good spot spiritually, like the first couple of months of COVID, I was buoyant. I was spiritually in a good place. And I was just thinking like, oh, maybe there's going to be this generational spiritual shift that's going to happen because we're thinking about death. All the pleasantries of just secular life are taken away. Like maybe people are going to go deep with God, and we're going to see this change. And even leading up to Easter, I was like, this is Jesus's day. Like something's going to happen on Easter. And so I was advertising church on Instagram. I was praying. I was expecting that there were going to be people who were hungry for God, like showing up online or something. And Easter came and went. Nothing happened. I was pitching a bunch of like, here's all these ways we can serve our community. Nothing was happening. And I got jaded. And so at first, welcome, Jimmy. Oh, I do want to hear about what happened at the Starbucks store. We will talk about that and pray about that at the end. Don't let me forget. But yeah, I was feeling super jaded, and I was kind of like, well, God, if you're not going to do anything with church, if you're not going to do it, because I was like, maybe this is House Church's moment in the sun. Like, we can't meet in mega churches anymore. Maybe we'll have to meet in homes, and like, maybe we'll have to like actually know the people that we go to church with. But I was like, yeah, God, if you're not going to do anything, then I guess I don't need to work on church as much. So I guess this will be kind of more like a vacation. And that opened up a lot of space in my schedule where there was nothing to do, nowhere to go. And so I just started drinking more. And I was drinking more and more. And it started out, 2 nights a week, became 4 nights a week, became 7 nights a week. And even at Man Group, I was like, I know that this is a problem. But it's this size of a problem, and I'm gonna deal with it when it's like this size of a problem. And it wasn't like I was getting wasted every night. Like it was usually 2, 3, but that was enough to hit me with some blissful stupidity at the end of the night to not have to think about things. Anyway, I knew that this was like not where I was supposed to be at, and this had to change. And so I set up the spiritual retreat. So back to the night, I'm spiritual retreats tomorrow. I'm sad that a bunch of my friends are leaving. Glug, 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 glug. Don't feel anything. The next day I wake up and I head out to this beautiful lake out on the pass. And I'm sitting out there and I'm reading this book by Henry Nouwen. And here's what he says. He says, before Jesus commissioned Peter to be a shepherd, he asked him, Simon, son of John, do you love me more than these others do? He asked him again, do you love me? And a third time he asked him, do you love me? So Peter, like the early leader of the church, before he commissions him, he asked him 3 times, do you love me? We have to hear that question as being central to all of our Christian ministry. Look at Jesus. The world did not pay any attention to him. He was crucified and put away. His message of love was rejected by a world in search of power, efficiency, and control. But here he was, appearing with wounds in his glorified body to a few friends who had eyes to see, ears to hear, and hearts to understand. This rejected, unknown, wounded Jesus simply asked, do you love me? Do you really love me? He whose only concern had been to announce the unconditional love of God had only one question to ask. Do you love me? The question is not, how many people take you seriously? How much are you going to accomplish? Can you show some results? But are you in love with Jesus? And that question hit me like a ton of bricks. It hit me super hard. And yeah, I was just like, it felt like my to-do list went from I have a million things to I have one thing that I have to do. I have one thing that I have to focus on, and this is the core of it. And I was just like, Jesus, is if all that you need from me right now is for me to love you, like I can do that. Like I can handle that, you know? And so I got out on my Michael's paddleboard that I'm borrowing probably for at least a year. I got out on it, and just this crisp, beautiful turquoise water underneath me, this warm golden sun is heating up my little flesh, and I'm out there, and I just felt like I was just paddling through heaven, felt like the shiniest penny in the pond, felt like God's love was just draped all over me, and I was just like, I love you, Jesus. And I wanna center in on that, and yeah, to be asking the question like, do I love Jesus more and more? And that's honestly, that's what we need more than anything else. Is we don't need a leader who is awesome at leading. We need this church needs somebody who's awesome at being led by Jesus and loving Jesus, right? And this church doesn't need someone who's super adept and skillful. This church just needs somebody who's vulnerable and loving, I think. And even more important than that, like whether Open Home makes it as a church or not is so much less important than do I love God more? Like, am I being loved by God, and does God love me? That's my main job. So I felt like I needed that recentering and that kind of tender moment with God before I was willing to start talking to him about the ways I was coping by drinking too much. And so after that, I was a couple hours later, I was hiking and I was like, okay, Jesus, I'm ready. Like, let's talk about the drinking. And I was like, give me a vision, like go, like do it. And so I closed my eyes and I felt like I saw Jesus, and he asked me for this bottle right here that I had used the day before to deliberately disobey him. And he said, give it to me. And I gave it to him. And yeah, I saw his hand like come and touch my heart. And I felt like Jesus was saying that if I, why am I crying again? I felt like Jesus was saying if I give him that he's going to show me new parts of my heart that I didn't know were there. Like parts of my heart that were grieving that I wouldn't be able to see if I coped, right? And so I am making room to grieve. I'm doing that on purpose, and it sucks. It sucks because you don't get to numb it. You have to feel it. And I'm not totally knocking alcohol out of my life. The rule right now, it sounds pretty weak to a lot of you, but the rule right now is 4 days a week I will not be drinking. And I feel okay with that right now because it wasn't really an issue of amount. It was more an issue of frequency. But on those 4 nights that I haven't been drinking, they've been really sad and really hard. And I do feel like I'm on a better track spiritually. But it's not just when 7 o'clock rolls around, it's like I've got the Pavlovian tick that I built up over the last 3 months of like, now it's time for a beer. That part's hard, but what's a lot harder is all the stuff that I'm not able to numb anymore. I don't get to numb how weird the world feels right now, how stuck in time I feel, how bored I am, how disappointed I am that the spiritual awakening that I wanted to happen isn't happening. All the fear that I feel about what's going to happen with money, all the fear I have for like what's going to happen with church. Like church attendance is half of what it was before coronavirus hit. And all the sadness about being a raging extrovert that's stuck in that basement. Pasta El Corvo is gone. It's not coming back.
What?
Yeah, a lot to grieve. Like the new season of Succession on HBO is not being made. Like there's so much to grieve right now. I don't get to numb out the guilt and the sadness that I feel about the racism that's surfacing. There's so much to numb. Personal, political. I think the hardest part is the loneliness. And the honestly, coronavirus was already bad. When I knocked alcohol back in my life, it's gotten worse. It's been hard. And I have been learning a few things about my heart. I don't think I'm there yet in terms of like the self-revelation that Jesus promised me. I don't think I'm there yet. I know that there's like this apathy that Jesus is talking about. I know that there's this controllingness where I want to work super hard during the day and then self-medicate with the self-abuse with blissful ignorance in a bottle. I know that, and I'm learning these things about myself, but I don't feel like I've arrived or that I've seen the redemption yet. I'm just in the process of the crucifixion right now. And I just want to say that that's all right, that opening yourself up to grief doesn't mean that you know where the resurrection is going to come yet. You just have to trust that it's going to. It's a scary place to say, I am not going to numb the pain and I'm going to sit with it, but we have to. So on that website that has our stuff for today, there's 3 questions. How am I coping with the grief? Why do I cope that way? And what might I learn about myself if I didn't rely on that way of coping? We're going to spend 10 minutes sitting with those questions, and then we're going to break into groups of 3, socially distanced 3 for the in-person people. And I'll break you guys up online into groups of 3 also. Yeah, we're gonna sit with that question. How am I coping with the grief? Why do I cope that way? And what might I learn about myself if I didn't rely on that way of coping? Final thought. This is some good stuff. Jesus said no to wine because he wanted to show up for the deepest and most bottomless pain. And what good would the cross have been if he'd been drunk? Right? After my spiritual retreat, I talked to Joseph Piper, the artist formerly known as Keith Piper. He's one of my best friends, and he used to be named Keith. He had to take a new name when he became a priest, and so I'm trying to train myself to call him Joseph now. And this guy gave up so much for Jesus. He grew up on a mansion on Capitol Hill. He had a basketball scholarship to Whitman College. Every single girl that he met wanted to date him. Deanna nods her head. I mean, obviously that's an overstatement, but you get the point. He gave all that up to become a priest. And now, like, he used to be super buff and cut. Now he's like rail thin and he's lost all of his muscle because he's been with this intense sect of priests in rural Argentina, taking care of the poor. So he has to eat what they eat, and it's rice and vegetables, and that's it. There's no meat in his diet. So he's basically gone. And he doesn't even have his own email account. Like, he's not allowed to have a personal email account. If you want to email him, you have to email the entire order of the priest. Like, it's intense. Not only, he can't have a computer, but he can't even have an email account, right? So this guy's gone hardcore into the like crucifixion side of the cross. And I was talking to him right after my little spiritual retreat that I just had. And I was like, and he was praying for me, and he was like, Caleb, be drunk in the spirit. Be drunk in the spirit. And when he said that, something clicked for me. Because every day I've been saying Psalm 16. And the way Psalm 16 ends is it goes, you make known to me the path of life. You will fill me with joy in your presence and eternal pleasures at your right hand. Eternal pleasures at your right hand. And every time that I was saying that, everything else in the psalm made sense to me. except for maybe this one part. Anyway, everything else in the psalm made sense to me, except for to say like, God, you're going to give me eternal pleasure, because I feel like usually pleasure has been something that I've had apart and against and away from God, not usually with, right? And so when he prayed, Caleb, be drunk in the Spirit, I was like, it clicked where it was like, the thing that I want from drinking, like God wants me to have those too. He just doesn't want me to have those like apart from him. And like God actually wants me to have pleasure. And I was like, Keith, like, no, sorry, Joseph. Like, I think, is it like, I think it's saying like, God actually wants us to have pleasure. Keith, now Joseph did not skip a beat. Like as soon as I said that, he said this. He says, yes, he does. Like God wants you to have pleasure. And we think that the spiritual pleasures that God gives us are going to be too ephemeral and too light. And so we run out and we grab all kinds of pleasures on our own to try and fill ourselves up. But the spiritual pleasures God has for us, they aren't too weak. They are the very pleasures that our souls were made for. And often it's when we discipline the flesh that we start to feel the pleasures of the Spirit. I want that. I know that life for me has been at its best when I am doing it with God and when the Spirit of God is in me and when I've got the pleasures of the Spirit. Don't need it. Don't need it. You guys, we don't need it. I know that I am not the only person that is coping. I know that this has been hard. Like, it's destroying community. It's leaving us feeling super isolated. And I know that there's other people that are coping. Media binge, porn, food, a relationship that you're not proud of, that you don't want to let other people know that it's happening. We don't need it. We don't need it. Talk to God about it. Let's pray. God, we're here to listen. I pray that I pray that I wouldn't be afraid of seeing the parts of my heart that you want to show me. I pray that you give us courage. God, please show us the way that we're coping and what life could be like if we didn't. You can look at the reflection questions if you're looking for some guidance. Amen. We're gonna break into groups of 3, talk about it, and when your group is done, we are done. When we get up and move around, we'll put our face masks on. Yeah, and for you guys online, we're not gonna come back to the main group. So when your little breakout is done, you are done. Love you guys.